welcome to On Democracy, the FP Wellman. I am your host, Fred Wellman. You're right in the right place, MeidasTouch or our network, wherever you're looking, listening and guiding. It's great to have you here. Man, there's so much going on. I mean, the George Santos, I'm going to go on for a while. There's so much to talk about. I got incredible guests to talk about it this week. As always, I'm thrilled to be back after the holiday. I'm glad to have you here. Let's get on with the show. Oh man, welcome back. As I mentioned, I am still Fred Wellman after the music. This is On Democracy with FP Wellman. You are in the right place, the right time. As always, make sure you like, share, say hi, leave a comment. I'm replying to you. I'm up all night on Friday night talking to you guys. So I really appreciate being here. Man, it is, as always, as crazy as always. And not just in Washington. It got kind of weird down in Florida, which I'm not going to talk about it because it's so bizarre that the co-founder of Moms Demand and her husband, or Moms for Liberty, and not Moms Demand, but Moms for Liberty, and oh my God, it's crazy down there. I'm not going to get into that. But up as we speak, they're debating where to kick George Santos out of the Congress. There's a million different things going on. There's a lot to talk about. Meanwhile, we're still trying to run a government. We're still trying to get ready. As we talked about last week on the show with the special solo episode, I think I was very clear. There are real challenges, and that first part of the show last week was a lot of those challenges. And I kind of want to talk about some of those pieces today with our guests. But you also don't forget, as we talk today with Stephen, don't forget what I said. We are winning. We're on the right side of this. There's things we have to do. The work is ahead of us. The issues that people care about are on our side. And I think you'll get that theme in this conversation today about the work that has to be done and the threats we face and how we're going to get there. So I'm just thrilled to have a guest I've wanted for a while. My very first Substack I think I subscribed to when I joined Substack was America, written by Stephen Bos. Stephen, welcome to the show. It's great to have you. For those who don't know, Stephen Bos is an award-winning content creator of many ways, writer, journalist, editor, filmmaker. Your bio is incredible. Consistent in his work is his passion for writing, and he has a belief in the transformative power of story, which if you read his stuff, as I mentioned, he speaks a lot through his newsletter, America, focused on politics, society, democracy, and justice. Just launched a new video series called Media Misses. So the timing couldn't have been better. I couldn't think of a better person to have this moment than you, sir. Thanks for joining us, Stephen.
Thank you, Fred. Happy to do it. This is kind of a moment, but I'd like to say it's a moment, not an endless series of moments that are just going to keep unfolding.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. We're getting into it now, right? One thing I've been saying a lot in the show, Stephen, is people haven't really been paying attention. It's funny. Last week, I highlighted. So I live here in Missouri, and a local Republican candidate actually ran a poll on their state Senate district, which is in western St. Louis County, which is a pretty well-educated and engaged community, right? And it was a Republican primary poll. There was 3 elected officials and 1 former elected official, or 2 and 1, running for the Senate seat. Now we're a year out, right? And the number one choice on it was 70% were undecided. Right. And I
even, what are they missing?
Yeah.
They're not noticing.
Right. So, and it gets into that. I mean, actually, we'll just start there since we led into it. One of the pieces you wrote the other day actually was about this indifference, right? And I think it's a theme that you want to talk about. And, it's the indifferent. How do we electrify the electorate and make them wake? And it kind of does lead into everything else we're going to talk about in this conversation is, this indifference that we worry about. I mean, I think you've written on the topic of how do we, actually, it's funny. I was actually reading your Substack today. I think you blew up your comments a couple of weeks ago because you asked your readers, what do they think you should do for, to wake people up? What was everybody saying? And what's your thoughts on that?
Well, look, there's a lot of people who think that the effort should be to try to reel in some of the Republicans who maybe are centrist, try to reel in some of the, even some of the Trump voters, that we need to expand that population. My view is that you have a large population of Democrats who are indifferent. You just have to look at previous elections and what the turnout was like, right? How many tens of millions of people who didn't vote. And so, if there's a time when we need to activate people who have been convinced that maybe not this time for one reason or another, I've got this problem with Biden, or, maybe as their memory fades, Trump isn't really so bad, any of those kind of things that might play out. There's nothing more important than to, in my view, to actually speak to the choir, expand the choir, and convince people that they need to do the work to talk to their friends and talk to their neighbors and talk to their family members, the ones they can still talk to, and motivate them to go to the polls and do the work, the basic fundamental work of democracy.
Right. And it's funny how often I talk to people, they say, well, Fred, what can I do other than vote? And actually kind of in my last week, I did kind of a solo show for the holiday. And it's one of the things I talked about. There are really wonderful ways you can get involved. Pick a candidate, pick a race, phone bank, canvas, send postcards. I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand there is opportunities to plug into our network. And I tell a lot of people, kind of talking about, we talk about this Moms for Liberty thing, right? Go to your school board meetings, go to your city council, go to your county council meetings, actually see the work that's being done. And by the way, be there to counter some of the crazy stuff, because there's some real democracy happening right in your town, right?
Right. But here's the thing. I mean, I focus on, storytelling is what I do. I lead something at a university called the Narrative Storytelling Initiative.
Yeah.
Right? It's operating in lots of different storytelling modes purposefully, because people consume information in different ways.
Yes.
Some people read, some people watch, some people listen. There's all different ways to get to people. And so, I think that the hard work of this time that's so urgent is to be able to get to people where they are and find some way to activate them, especially if they're those weird, fence sitters, or that they're in some ways, convinced it's not their problem.
Well, that's brilliant. And that's kind of where we come from. It's, we write, we do video, we try to hit people, we try to give them the information they need to have direct conversations, right? We have to arm each other to have these direct conversations. And there's no one way to get that to people, right? You have to, and story is the key. And to that topic, your new video series, which I love your first one, called Media Misses, with your colleague from the Chicago Times, right? So
he was at the Chicago Sun-Times, and last was sort of the former Metro editor of the Chicago Tribune, Mark Jacob.
There you go.
And he did a really good kind of media critic in this period, which is how I sort of connected with him. And, I've been wanting to do more media criticism. All of these stories get layered, I think, in meaningful ways in terms of who's framing and how they're going about framing what's going on. Those who've sort of lost the sense of how urgent the problem is, who are missing it in some way or glossing over in some way the dangers that are on our doorstep. And so, so this was an idea to really specifically, in short form, not 40 minutes, not 50 minutes, but in 5 to 7 minutes. I think the first one is 8 minutes. We're 5 to 7 minutes to be able to pick a story and talk about what's wrongheaded about it and what it missed and how it ought to be handled in a different way. So every week we're going to try to take a hard look at one story, usually a news story, but a media story of some sort or another, and look at how the journalist missed it. And it's both a chance to look at the state of journalism, right, and the reluctance to say things directly, and confront the danger that we're in directly, not feel like you have to pull back and be careful and polite, that this is a time to say things precisely as they are, to tell the truth. And if not, the consequences couldn't be more grave.
Well, that's it. And the timing was great. I mentioned this Columbia Journalism Review article I read, and they analyzed their front page stories in the New York Times and the Washington Post, hundreds of them. And they found that, I think for the 2022 cycle, barely 3 stories on the New York Times front page even talked about domestic political policy, with literally dozens and dozens of stories that were simple, what they call horse race, right? It's this constant, there's this attraction to talking about who's up and who's down. And we talk about it a lot in the show. Matter of fact, the theme last week of our show, I stole from some great, smart people online, was that it's not the odds, it's the stakes, right? There's too much discussion of what the odds are, who's up, who's down today. Nikki Haley got the Koch brothers, give her. It's not about what are the stakes, like what are the policies going to get us in trouble, and that's the approach we have to take. It's funny, and in that story we talked about, I hinted at the beginning about the situation in Florida, and to keep it simple, it came out this week that the chairman of the Florida GOP apparently was involved in a consensual 3-way relationship with his wife and another woman, whatever, but he's accused of sexually assaulting apparently this third woman and a thing. But what I found interesting too was that story was broken by by a local group. It wasn't it wasn't the New York Times that broke it.
Right.
It wasn't it was
Right.
it was like it was a government watchdog group that had the Florida Trident, it's called. Right? They're the one because they heard the rumors and they did the due diligence. They did a Sunshine Law Act, and they got the police report showing this gentleman had been arrested. Good journalism is not what we think it is anymore, right? It's different than it used to be, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes you have, again, the traditional mainstream that's reluctant to get into that sort of thing. Like, it's not their terrain. But of course, it is the terrain because these are questions of values and morals, which at this time is exactly the point. Are you advocating for democracy? Are you advocating for, working for making lives better and expanding rights and so forth, or are you using your positions to strip away rights and strip away the kind of governance that's gotten us to the better places in our country? So that kind of behavior, under different times and under different circumstances, there may be legitimately more reason to be reluctant. I don't think there's a reason now.
Right. I think those barriers have been broken down. In this case, it is apparently crime. Apparently, there was a sexual assault involved. So obviously, that's a very serious issue of crime. But even more so, that his spouse, for whatever, she's a co-founder of Moms for Liberty. She's a school board member. She literally ran on her platform was bringing, quote, religious values to the school system, the public school system. And yet, apparently, that wasn't part of her. So there is a note. While everyone we deal with is apparently the hypocrisy gene has been removed from the GOP. I don't know how.
We're led to believe. I mean, it's not a bug, it's a feature, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the pattern seems to be going on over and over again.
Yeah.
And look, I blame you for all these things. Meanwhile, it's exactly what I'm doing. So I know a whole lot about it. Right.
Well, that's it, and we see that, and it arcs up. It arcs up to D.C., where George Santos is probably likely to lose his seat anytime now as he fights. But the hypocrisy that he's himself is accusing of his peers. I mean, it is a constant value and string through the conversation about the GOP and others, disabilities, and it goes to I think we've talked about a little bit in our conversations. Twitter, for example, right? I mean, it is going on with Elon. If you saw Elon's appearance this week with the New York Times, I don't know how you could have missed it. Where he tells his advertisers to I'll just say GFY, and go F yourself.
Go F yourself.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But what I thought,
and he didn't say at one time. Andrew Sorkin was sort of shocked when he heard it the first time. And Musk said it again, and then I think he said it for a third time, and then he specifically targeted to Bob Iger, the head of Disney. This is where we are, right? That we have a billionaire who has destroyed what once was an environment where actually you had a discourse that was wide, that was significant. It was a way to get news and information reliably, and it was a way for progressive communities to actually connect and build and communicate with each other in meaningful ways. I mean, I've made all kinds of meaningful contacts with people and had a chance to be able to not only say what was on my mind, but really to hear from others what was on theirs. And what he's done is, and I think he's done it consciously and he's done it methodically, he's destroyed it. I mean, it's not only about how much value it's lost, right, from the $44 million purchase, partly funded by the Saudis, but it's somebody who's obviously interested under the guise of free speech to be able to prioritize the right-wing extremists and the bigots and, the Nazis and the neo-Nazis and the anti-Semites and all of that. And I'm sure you've had the same experiences.
It's truly hate speech.
Incredible abuse.
Yeah, it's so different than it used to be. I'm a Lincoln Project guy. I mean, I was the. I mean, believe me,
you know something about abuse.
I've seen some stuff. It's whatever. But there was recourse where, like, I think I got doxed basically, or someone had posted pictures of my daughter. and made memes that I think they'd stolen from my personal Facebook. But they're posting pictures of my daughter in very, very disgusting things, and I was able to report that. There was somebody I knew had used to work there, and they helped me. And guess what? That guy was blocked. I mean, he was removed from the platform because he shouldn't have been doing that. Now, forget about it, man. Like, there's just no point. There's no one there, first of all.
Yeah,
and so the hate speech is so
the meaningful thing from my perspective, it's not only the sadness about Twitter, which once was a thing and a reliable environment, is that it's broken down, it's fractured the whole communication ecosystem, and therefore, I don't know about you, but I'm on 6 different social media platforms right now. It's exhausting, but I also feel like I don't have the kind of connection with people through social media the way that I did. And, frankly, that's why for me the Substack is that much more important, because that's an opportunity for me to really build a community, of my own, of people who are drawn to whatever it is that I might want to write about, and to create communication between them. And it's been growing and growing and growing. And, and part of it may be growing exactly because Twitter, what once was Twitter, has been, destroyed. But, I think it's important if we can't have the whole ecosystem on one platform, it just becomes that much more important that we devote energy to some of these smaller platforms that have the ability to grow and to be able to create the kind of meaningful communication that needs to happen.
Yeah, and it does go to that the disbursement, the real-time nature that was Twitter when I joined Twitter, the ability to reach out to people. When I joined Twitter originally is 2009. I tell a story often. I don't know if I've ever told it on this platform, but I was still in the Army, and I was involved with an organization called The Mission Continues, which is based here in St. Louis. And I was one of their first volunteers. I was their DC guy, even though I was in the Army still. And I just joined Twitter. And Craig Newmark, if you know from Craigslist,
Sure.
tweeted out. He tweeted on this is early days, right? Only when there was hundreds of thousands of people on there, millions. And he tweeted, "Hey, I'd really love to find a veterans organization I could support." He gives his money away like crazy. So I'd love to find a veterans organization support. And I replied on Twitter, "Hey, I've got this organization I work with. The Mission Continues." I don't think there was DMs then, believe it or not. But he replied right. He goes, "Hey, send me an email about it. Craig@Craigslist.com." That literally is his email. He puts it out on Twitter. And I'm like, okay. So I emailed Craig Newmark, the founder of Craigslist, he was a billionaire, whatever, and said, "Hey, here's this group." Sent a little prospectus, introduced him to the founder, and bing, bang, boom, he freaking donated to him, and he's still involved in the veterans community. He's on the board of Iraq, Afghanistan Veterans of America. I mean, and that was that power of that platform, that ability to reach. I know people who are into it now understand that that was so unique about that platform when it started, right?
I mean, I'll say, I have lots of followers, people that I'm connected with, lots of Hollywood people, lots of some very high profile people that, I like them. I liked them before, but I would have had no way to connect with them necessarily. Right. And instead, there was an opportunity to have a real communication. And in some cases, it led to doing something together offline and out in the real world. So, that's broken. I don't take it personally, obviously, but I look at it as being part of this effort. I think a systematic effort. I don't know all of the motivations behind what Elon Musk is doing, but I'm pretty clear that he had an interest in breaking progressive communities and prioritizing the bigots and the right wingers and all the people that that he thought are part of his version of planet Earth.
Yeah, that was quite the thing. Though. Planet Earth will judge, right?
It's as if he's the commander of planet Earth, by the way. Wow. And this is also the problem, right? Which is that the richest man in the world, who's obviously mentally unstable. I'm not going to diagnose him clinically, but this person who thinks that he has ultimate power, that norms don't apply to him, and he can say and do whatever he feels like it. And it reminds me of the ex-president who has the same mentality. There's something about the old expression is power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, these guys seem to have taken that notion and proven it in pretty vivid fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go into it. The next talk will be the course, how this all plays into that coursing of our discussions. Where we're going to take a really brief second. We have some amazing sponsors, both Human and Fume will be hearing from us. Let's talk to our sponsors real quick. Cold turkey may be great on sandwiches, but there's a better way to break your bad habits. And I'm not talking about some weird mind voodoo or a wacky message board. No, we're talking about our sponsor, Fume, and they look at the problem in a different way. Now, not everything in a bad habit is bad. So instead of a drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-nominated device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of chemicals, Fume uses all natural, delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. Your Fume comes in an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing anxiety while breaking your bad habit. The first time I used Fume, I was shocked at how flavorful and fresh it tasted. It's easy to hold and perfectly balanced, and quite honestly, extremely fun to fidget with. The real wood material and sleek design definitely classes it up, and I feel pretty darn cool holding it. Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and honestly, even fun. Fume has served over 100,000 customers and has thousands of success stories. There's no reason that can't be you. So join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Now, head to tryfume.com and use code FRED to save 10% when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com and use code FRED to save an additional 10% off your order today. Heart health and staying healthy, especially when you have a family you want to spend time with, is so important. So important. So we could all benefit from heart healthy energy. Now, one of the best ways to get some, by supporting your blood pressure and circulation. SuperBeets Heart Chews are an easy and convenient way to support healthy blood pressure. They're plant-based and stimulant-free, so you get a green boost without the jitters of caffeine. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants of SuperBeets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. SuperBeets Heart Chews are incredibly delicious and so much better than any alternative supplements out there. I take my SuperBeets Heart Chews each morning, and it's really kickstarted my morning routine. After taking my SuperBeets Heart Chews, I feel like I have more energy and I'm ready to take on the day. SuperBeets is the #1 doctor, pharmacist, and cardiologist recommended beet brand for cardiovascular health support. It's blood pressure support you can trust. SuperBeets Heart Chews support healthy circulations, so you not only get blood pressure support, you also get productive, heart-healthy energy without the crash. Now, double your potential with SuperBeets Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of SuperBeets Heart Chews and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com and using promo code FRED. That's getsuperbeets.com, code FRED. Check out Human SuperBeets. You won't regret it. Okay, we're back. So the thing about Twitter, and we talked a little bit about before the break, is that there has been a coarsening. I mean, look, Twitter was always a little the Wild West. I mean, that's okay. I mean, I'm not one to criticize. I drop more F-bombs on there than I do on this mug. That's been my thing. I always have Steve Schmidt used to call me up and criticize me for it, which is fine. But our overall discourse, and I think you wrote a piece about how vile, how coarsening our discourse has become, and you wrote out a come on and get the Trump's Thanksgiving Day message. If you don't mind, I'll quote you. You said, but it served Trump's Thanksgiving message, which was so disgusting, but it should serve once again as a warning and reminder of our collective responsibility to push back against his further degrading of public discourse and normalization of violence and hate, twin dangers to our democratic society, which I thought was a terrific way to write that. As the things, the pushing. I mean, like we were just talking about in the pre-show about I guess the gag order went back into effect, for that very reason.
And by the way, you have a judge who said that he's going to rigorously and vigorously defend it. So we'll see, right? Is this a time actually where at least this judge has decided that he's going to stand up to the mob style president and push back and demonstrate, finally that he's not intimidated by him and he's not fearful of the consequences of doing it, that seems like we have had happen again and again. So, this issue for me, in some ways, I mean, it actually goes back to the early days of Twitter, because I, it's at a certain point I was pretty neutral, fact-based always, but neutral, sharing ideas and so forth. And then I made a decision in the early days of Trump that I needed to say exactly what I was thinking and feeling, and differentiate what's right and what's wrong, and what's true and what's false, and what's normal and what's crazy. And partly it was this fear of normalization of this kind of degrading conversation, this kind of vile rhetoric that here we are this many years later, and unfortunately people have grown accustomed to it. I think it's part of the explanation of why you have 30 to 40% of the Republican Party who believes in political violence as a justifiable response to the country that they see disappearing. So, this combination of and systematic expression of violence and hate, at a certain point, people, that some turn off, but some people they just don't, it no longer registers as a problem because it's so common. And so, in some ways the conversation about the, degrading discourse could have been written, 5 or 6 years ago, but here we are still dealing with it.
Yeah, and it's funny. I actually saw right before, as I was prepping for the show, I should have saved to my computer, but the viewers know I'm just completely absent-minded. But there was a graph somebody put out about how much coverage there was in the first week of Hillary Clinton's deplorables comment on media versus Trump's comment of calling us vermin, right? And it was like 54 minutes on average of coverage for the first week for Clinton, but like 3 minutes of coverage about the other guy, a former president himself, not a candidate, but a former president, calling many Americans vermin. There's become a lower standard, isn't there?
Right. Well, and this is the thing. There's been a legitimate conversation about, do you want to repeat it? Do you want to amplify it?
Right.
Do you actually help him by amplifying? And I used to worry about that, right? I used to worry about the repeating of it because, again, it gets into people's heads and it repeats and people get accustomed to it. Yeah. That's a problem. But on the other hand, we're at a point now, and I think a real dangerous sort of knife point where this stuff has to be highlighted, spotlighted, talked about, reminded, and I think over and over and over again. I mean, it's, there was an article today, Robert Kagan in the Washington Post, which I'll read the headline of it, which makes the point. A Trump dictatorship is increasingly inevitable. We should stop pretending.
Wow.
Right. And then it goes on to lay out, all the ways that that's true, including that we're now 13 weeks away from essentially Trump being the nominee. 13 weeks from now is, eight primaries that happen in January and February, 13 that happen in March 5th. That's 21 primaries that will have happened by then it's over. Right. So I've been trying to think in terms of, we have a year to sort things out. Well, we don't. I mean, we're, and the point that Kagan is making, and I think it's a really important one, is that we're, once that hits, whatever reluctance there has been, well, let's put it the other way around, whatever willingness that Republicans have had to say something critical about Trump, that's going to all go away, once he's the presumptive nominee.
That's a really good point. And it's funny you say that. I had not thought of that. That's a very good point, right? There will come a point where they have to get on board. They've all promised to get on board. So whatever light criticism there's been to date will disappear completely and they'll all get online. Then we've got a clear, I mean, part of me as an old soldier likes clarity in my opposition, if you know what I'm saying. There will be a clarity of who we are up against, and we can clarify. And I think maybe perhaps, I guess I'm an optimist. See, this is the weird thing. If you don't watch Stephen, if you don't know me, I have this weird optimism streak. People can't believe it. 22 years in the Army, and then, being a Lincoln Project guy. But no, I really do. I am an optimistic guy. I do believe in our country. I mean, that's what I fought for. That's why I proudly wore the flag on my shoulder for most of my adult life, is that there's an optimism. I do believe in this country and the rightness of our country, and that here right matters, as my friend Alex Vindman's book right here on the table says. I do hope, and I point out a lot, Stephen, and if regular viewers have heard this bit before, but it's easy to forget that I was with the Lincoln Project in the latter part of the campaign. I joined in August of 2020, but they only formed the Lincoln Project in December of 2019. Their first commercial, the breakout hit of the Lincoln Project, was Morning in America, and that was in May. So, I do take hope that the battle hasn't truly been joined yet, if you will, right?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
I think that's right. Yeah. I mean, it's scary to think about March 5th as sort of a kind of end of the line, but it underscores, I think, what I said at the beginning, which is, the people that we need to speak to are the indifferent ones, the tens of millions of Americans that sat out the last election, who thought it was somebody else's problem, not theirs. I think it was a 67%, just under 67% that did vote. But that means you had, roughly 70 million people that's registered voters that sat out. That's a lot of people that we have the potential to respond to and motivate. And, the Republicans, the Trump voters and all that, that's a problem for another time. Right now, I think it's about activating the choir, making sure that the choir sings better and is more voluminous.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the work. And so, I think about this issue of indifference a lot in terms of the climate crisis, for example.
Sure.
Why is it that people don't care more when it's possible to look into a future of existential, death and destruction? Well, I mean, I think we have time, and I think there's things that we can do, but the biggest problem isn't, who's a denier of climate change, but rather how large the population is of people who accept that it's a real thing, but just think it's not their problem, or they're, despairing, or they're somehow overwhelmed and think that they are not capable of having agency. So I think the same thing is operating here with democracy.
That's great insight. I agree, and then the threat is real. I think you've written about the Project 2025 stuff, and the even darker one is the Agenda 47, as they call it, which is the pure Trump one. And the threat isn't just Trump. I think you and I talked about that a little bit too. Is that while Trump is the immediate sort of the face of the danger, the Heritage Foundation's project was 80 organizations, and where in the past Heritage just sort of wrote a guidebook to say, hey, here's our policy book. This is much different. The Project 2025 approach, where I just did a video for MeidasTouch this week. I hope people watch it. It's a good one. About the personnel aspect, the Schedule F, the recruiting of 54,000 people to go immediately into the government. I mean, what people have to understand is there's only 4,000 existing political appointment positions within the federal government, which is a lot for each administration to fill, and they struggle to fill that. These guys are recruiting 54,000 people for their very malevolent plan to take over our federal government.
And let's end the independent judiciary. Let's end the nonpartisan civil service.
Yep.
Let's make everyone there in service to the chief, right? In service to the dictator. And look, it's sometimes shocking to think that they're being so vivid and clear now. They're telling us exactly what they want. And, obviously what underlies this is this belief in the unitary executive, right? To put all the power into the presidency. We have a problem because the presidential office has too much power. But the fact is we're being told exactly what it is. And, even without a Donald Trump, I mean, there is a growing infrastructure, a network of people. That's the future that they want. And they're telling us. And so, it's back to this question, frankly, of storytelling and communication, which is how do we communicate with people in a way that people grasp the gravity of what's going on and the potential danger that lies ahead. And in part, I'm thinking that, this is about frankly, a lack of social imagination, right? It's a lack of imagination about what that future looks like, because people are comfortable and somehow convinced that, well, that won't happen here, or that won't happen to me. Right. I think a lot about this plan that's afoot to, to round up millions of migrants, put them in detention camps, and then deport them without due process. well, some people might say, well, that's migrants, not my problem. But my expectation is if you set up a structure like that, there's a lot of ancillary people. There's a lot of collateral damage that's going to touch a lot of other people beyond migrants.
Well, that's it. And it's something I did. I keep plugging these videos. I've been doing a whole series. I've done, I think, so far like 3 videos on this topic of Project 2025, and I tell the story. You'll laugh. YouTube actually kind of like downgraded the ads on this video because I talked about what I saw in Iraq. I mean, for me as an Iraq veteran of the OIF, I was there for the first iteration, that first year with the 101st Airborne, and a big part of my job was working with local civilians. I controlled a swath of the area around our base in northern Iraq, and that led me to be the guy who Iraqis would bring their claims against the former government to. And so I was sort of a government representative, which was weird, but here we are. I was a helicopter pilot, go figure, among our jobs. But the stories you heard about what life was like under Saddam Hussein for 35 years, and the very dark things where people were scooped up in the night, or where a story that really struck me on that topic of the immigration raids is a guy told me that under Saddam, what you could do is, like, if your neighbor had better land, if their village had better land, all you had to do was call the government up and say, hey, they're insurgents, or they're traitors, or they're conspiring. They've got hidden weapons, and the army would raid the village and take people off. And guess what? Land was available all of a sudden, right? I mean, they were using this dark mechanism that was supposed to, keep the peace against each other. And there's no reason to believe we wouldn't see the same thing. Right. What if you don't like your Mexican neighbors? Illegal or not, I don't like their music. It's not a stretch, right? It's not a stretch.
Yeah. And look, I think that the challenge is people don't want to imagine these things, right? So the tricky work is to be able to, articulate what that looks like, give people the ability to visualize a future like that, rewind from that point and look at, is that the world that you want? What can you do between now and that possible future so that isn't the inevitable outcome? That's a real work to do. And look, I think the other thing is, your point that you're an optimist by nature. Well, we can ring the alarm bell hard for the next year, and we can talk about the dark stuff, but we also have to talk about the reasons for optimism and the reasons for hope, so that people understand that, that also needs to fuel people's belief in the future we can have.
Yeah, and good things are happening, and it's good to see. The Biden agenda is working. The economy is turning around. We avoided what should have been recession. If you just go gas prices, the turkey was lower, all these things, there is hope, and it's not perfect. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. It's like I defend the civil service, but by God, it made me crazy when I was in the army. That's okay. That's
a man who loves bureaucracy.
Right. I know.
A dangerous bureaucrat.
Right. I mean, again, it was uncomfortable for me to defend it, but also by the same token, I like the idea of government officials being able to tell me no and not get fired for it. But the same token, there is good things happening. It's hard to see all the smoke and mirrors around Mr. Biden's age, President Biden's age, around Vice President Harris. It's all smoke that is obscuring the good things that are happening for so many, and the belief that we can bet better. And I think I want to go back, and I want to probably the place to tie that bow on this conversation, because we can tell the story better. And it's funny, as we were talking about these dark days, these people being swooped up, there's been such amazing examples of how we can tell the story of what's to come and turn around. Which, I don't know if you saw that ad. Remember, there was a great ad, I think Meidas did it, which was the woman and the daughter being pulled over by the police as they're trying to get an abortion, right? Where are you going? The Handmaid's Tale, that great ad that was done this last cycle. I think it was in, I want to say, Ohio, where there was the Republican guys in the bedroom with the couple. We can tell the stories effectively to bring it home to people. The wonderful ad that was done, I guess, a young woman who suffered from not being able to get an abortion and got very sick because of it. We're going to have to bring those stories out to shape this so people understand a nuanced policy and how it can affect them. I guess that's where storytellers like you come in, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's also, it's articulating what are the underlying values, that you do care about, right? So, the flip side of this kind of dark vision of immigration is, do you believe in equality and diversity? Do those things matter? Do you actually realize that the country's growth and prosperity, the beauty of America has largely been an outcome of having this incredible diversity diverse population with all the ideas and insights and ambitions that come along with that. That's the flip side. So it's almost like, with every one of these kind of dark stories, to be able to make sure we also give light to the flip sides that that in essence describes what could be lost if we don't do the right thing a year from now.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that this country was built on immigration. I had the funniest life story. On my father's side, we're OGs. We 1640 Puritans, if you will, in Boston. But my mom's side, I'm a second generation immigrant. My mom was, first. Her parents both came from Italy in the early aughts, and so that this is the American story. The American story is this blending of those, and there is different populations, and it is the welcoming arms of that liberty that we love. It's what we defend. It's frustrating to see this argument going on Capitol Hill right now about Ukraine aid and Israel aid being tied into immigration reform, which is really stopping it. It is insidious.
It's why for me, I made a point of writing about, the speech that Hakeem Jeffries gave as soon as he got the, minority leader's position. And it was a piece it was a speech all about sort of diversity as a country's strength. And every now and then I'll go back to that, and Biden has something to say about that too. But just to remind people, these are the things that are at stake. This is an existential battle over values. What kind of country do you actually want to live in? Do you really want to see the end of the American democratic experiment, or don't you? And if that resonates, if the idea of being able to sustain something that's been going on for well over 200 years, we're marching right up to 250 years as a country. This is not the time to be letting it all get thrown away. I go back and right now and then about the Gettysburg Address, for example, where you have the ultimate phrase of for the people, for the people, by the people, and the sort of commitment that was made under the most dire circumstances. Same thing. I'll go back and write sometimes about Frederick Douglass, who experienced incredible torture as an enslaved person, but went on to provide this kind of incredible public role as somebody advocating for a vision of a democratic America.
Yeah. The belief in it and the change that comes with it. We see it here. I live in Missouri, and the Missouri has experienced a higher death rate than a birth rate for the last 3 years, and a higher exfiltration than an infiltration. In other words, the state is shrinking. These are facts, and so we built this country by welcoming in others and helping them settle and helping them find work and helping us be a better country. And there's always been resistance to it. History is raft with
again and again and again, right?
Again and again. But in the end, it works out, right? Like I said, my people, the Italians, weren't exactly welcomed. Everybody go, oh, we love the hill here in St. Louis is the Italian section. Yeah, they had their own section because they weren't welcome anywhere else. It's easy to forget that part. We have Chinatown because nobody wanted them anywhere else but that little district, right? So, but here we are, and I do want to find hope, and with that, I guess it's a great place to stop. And I love that you do write hopeful. You do write. The title of your newsletter is America. America is a belief in the future of what we're fighting for and what can be, and to understand there's work to do it. So I think I appreciate that, right?
Thank you. And look, we have. I'm going to say it again. We have a year. Yeah, right? This is the time. Come March, it might be even more clear how urgent it is. But we have a year to be able to voice, our belief in the country that we want, and tell our friends and tell our neighbors and tell our family members and do what we can to make sure that a year from now, we're not all crying in our soup, but we're, encouraged that the tyrannizing minority, failed to accomplish what they were after.
Yeah, it's as a person who's definitely on the list since I'm being sued.
I don't want to have a conversation with you a year from now about what country we're planning.
Yeah, which I'm fleeing to and which gulag. I used to joke with my son who was going to get the top bunk in the gulag.
It used to be a funny joke,
Yeah, it's not as funny anymore. Weird, right? Yeah. Especially for me the last 3 weeks with me when I've suddenly found myself being sued over 3 tweets. It is obvious that there is a list. There are people they have picked, and if you don't believe in that, I guess
But the duty is to stand up. You know, that's the duty, right? It's, you know, you served your country in the military. Well, this is another form of serving your country, and I think it couldn't be more important.
I think in many ways it is.
See it that way.
Yeah, and the freedom. People tell me all the time. They said, "Do you miss being in uniform, Fred?" I said, "There's parts of it I miss, but I also don't miss the part where I'm allowed to say what I want and fight this battle in a way that needs to be fought." I love my peers in the military. I love what they do, but there's a battle being joined that they're not the right ones for that job. The military isn't the answer to everything. Sometimes it's passionate people who can say F-bombs every now and then, you know, and be honest. You know, I would rather the military. It's like I talk about a lot of people say, well, why isn't President Biden out there swinging? And I don't want President Biden in the dirt with us. You know, he should stay above it. Let us guys who are guerrilla fighters fight that war. And I'd rather he go lead things and stay out of it. So, well, thank you. Tell everybody where they can find your newsletter, find you, sir. And I'm sure that I want more people to follow you.
Yeah, so it's America. It's at america.substack.com. You know, that's where the longer form writing happens 3 times a week. Yep. You know, there's where you'll find Media Misses every week.
Great.
You know, you'll find me all over social media as well.
Well, I appreciate you, sir. It's just a joy to finally get a chance to talk to you. I've been a fan for a long time, and I guess when I joined Substack, and yours is the first one that was suggested, and the first one I signed up for. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate your time and jumping on here with us, talking about this. But it's just keep up the fight. That's all we can do, right?
That's all we can do. My pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, thanks. I enjoyed it. Thank you. We'll talk to you again soon. What a great discussion. I've been a fan of Stephen's for a while. If you haven't, America's the newsletter. He's very, unlike me, he's very good about being on time and sending it out regularly. You know me, I'm a little bit bumpy. I love you guys, but I apologize for that. I have to write when the mood strikes me. As always, you can find I would love you to follow our Substack, fpwellman.substack.com. I'm generating a lot more content there. I'm enjoying it more. We're doing some fun stuff on there. I'd love you to be a paid subscriber as we go through the world. It does help us keep doing this work right here and supporting us. As always with Forgotten Democrats, I don't talk about it a lot, Lee, and that's a mistake on my part because I don't know, multi-million-dollar lawsuits aren't things going on. There's a lot going on. Who knew? I don't know why. But as always, I would love you to check out Forgotten Democrats. We do have a town hall coming up. I can't wait. I'm going to bring a friend in. This is the idea that we will crowdsource and crowdfund those Democratic congressional nominees who have the biggest need first, and so support them in their efforts because frankly, so many 126 were underfunded. 2023 Republicans ran unopposed last cycle. We can't keep doing that, and so the Forgotten Democrats is very clearly dedicated to that idea, the idea that we should fund those who need the money amongst us first, with those at least first. So check it out. That's forgottendemocrats.com org. You can see it on the screen. In the meantime, man, I really appreciate you being here. If you help us with the algorithm on YouTube and on our, of course, Apple, Spotify, wherever, just hit a like, hit a share, write a great review. We'd love to hear from you. I'd love you to say hi as always in the comments. I try to answer a lot of people. It gets pretty crazy sometimes when the replies get in the thousands, which is just incredibly humbling. And I want to thank everyone who's been supportive of our efforts with our lawsuit from Mr. Flynn. This ridiculous lawsuit. We're getting ready to start dropping our filings now. A lot of people have asked me, so I shall tell you an update that we will be fighting back. We will be asking for dismissal with prejudice. What he's doing is clearly an attempt to stop free speech, and I'm not here for it. I'm not here for it. You know, a friend of mine said, I love what he said, there's nothing more dangerous than a man with zero fucks and very few assets. I am that guy. Okay. I have zero fucks and no assets. And so if you want to mess with me and try and take away what little I have and the way I support my family, bring it. Absolutely bring it. Because we are fighting for something much more important, which is the soul of our nation. And people who think they can simply use our legal system to intimidate and scare people out of their free speech, they've met the wrong freaking guy. I ain't it. So thank you for your support. Those who have donated even a little bit to our legal defense fund. We're in great shape for our first phase of this operation. So just thank you from the very bottom of my heart for all the support you always give this wonderful community around the On Democracy podcast and show. It just means the world to me. So with that, thanks for joining us. We will see you next week with another great show.